Hi, Gigi. Can you,
Aloha.
aloha. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the acronym FASD means and what fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is?
FASD stands for Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. It's an umbrella term used to encapsulate people that have been exposed to alcohol while their mother was pregnant with them in utero. Um, like anything else, there is an array of um, effects caused from the alcohol, which is 5 times more potent on the fetus than the mother. And about 1 in 40,000 babies are born a year afflicted with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and that is about 1 in 100, and there are estimates that it could really be much worse, 1 in 20 to 50 babies.
Wow.
Um, what happens is the alcohol crosses the placenta. It's a teratogen. It primarily affects, in the early stages of pregnancy, it affects the frontal lobe, which is responsible for of the brain, which is responsible for your executive functioning, understanding cause and effect, higher order thinking, and planning.
Wow, and there is no cure.
There is no cure. There are um, things you can do to help these kids, provide more structure, um, but there is no cure. It's a lifelong, invisible disability for the most part.
And you can't undo the damage. You can just
No.
try to cope with
You can make adaptations.
adapt to the problem. Well, that brings me to the next question, which is the community that you're trying to build to help these adults deal with their disability.
Yes, it's called FASD Communities. I founded it in 2010. We became a nonprofit in 2011, and we're comprised of about 150 task force members from across the U.S., ranging from Alaska to Florida and everywhere in between, and probably another 80 to 100 that want to be on our mailing list and are potential collaborators. Most of the people on the task force are parents and have children, so have really lived it and breathed it and really understand it. Oftentimes these youngsters are misdiagnosed as ADD or non-compliant when in reality it's a whole different set of problems.
Okay, so what happens to a lot of FASD people is that they're misdiagnosed and they're probably put into systems of care that aren't appropriate for what they're suffering from.
Right, and then in the school system they don't get the right help that they need. And they baffle teachers because their learning patterns are very uneven. Sometimes they can do well and sometimes they can't. They have very poor short-term memory and recall. They generally function at about a half to two-thirds of their chronological age, especially emotionally. And many times they hit the wall in middle school, so they would be better tracked if they could learn a technical skill or something like that for when they finish. Um, they typically have problems of money management, um, exploitation by others. They're very sociable and charming, so people don't believe there's anything wrong, as it is an invisible disability. Um, and they function, things are very black and white. They aren't able to generalize. Their higher order thinking skills don't work well. Only 20% are able to live independently, and of the other 80 that aren't, 60% end up incarcerated. Um, a lot end up homeless, drug addicted, or on the streets. So what we're trying to do is the first of its kind in the nation. We're trying to create an environment in a sort of group home setting where, with a lot of structure and protections in place, where they can live amongst their friends and where they can have mentors that will help them with job coaching or create employment opportunities such as farming along with side by side with the residents. So it's a tall task, and we hope that once we get the first one up, which is going to be in Platteville, Wisconsin, where we have many collaborations in place with the University of Platteville, their education department, their psychology department, and their agricultural department. Also, the University of Wisconsin-Madison wants to collaborate, and they're renowned for FASD research and trainings across the country. So we have a group of devoted parents that will not stop until we see this come to fruition. Most of these parents have reached their wits' end, both emotionally and financially. They've been living with these children for 20 to 25 years, and it's kind of a surreal life. Some of them are very combative or go into rages. Some of them are milder, but they all have issues that don't fit in sort of the acceptable norm of society, the biggest of which is they don't get cause and effect, and they make the same mistakes 5, 10, 20 times, and they don't learn from their mistakes. Dollars towards the purchase of the property, which is about $300,000. It includes 11-bedroom house, 8 bathrooms with 3.5 acres of land, which is already being farmed. And we want to, once this is set up successfully, replicate it across the U.S. as we find the appropriate spot and the demand. We need some more help with fundraising. We're seeking out foundations all the time. We're seeking individuals. We feel strongly that these are innocent victims, both the young adults and their families, and that they, like everybody else with a disability, deserve help, and there is nothing available to them at the moment. They totally fall through the cracks. We're targeting them from 22 years old and up, because below that, if there are any services, they're still entitled to them in the DOE up to age 22.
Oh, I see. So they still have social services funding, but once they hit, what age did you say?
22, there's absolutely nothing available to them.
And that's when they slip through the cracks.
Yeah. And bear in mind, although there's 22, the expectations are stepping into adult life, but they're emotionally more like a 15-year-old. So we're asking 15-year-olds to go get a job, rent an apartment, manage their life, and it can't happen.
Well, that brings me to another issue, is that for the society at large, for people who aren't dealing with FASD on a personal level or on a familial level, why should they want to get involved?
Well, they should want to get involved in the same way that they have a sympathy or a compassion for someone that has autism or Down syndrome. The stats for FASD young adults, or just in general, there are more FASD affected people than there are Down syndrome, spina bifida, and Asperger's combined together.
Wow.
So it's a huge problem that society isn't aware of, and it's the right thing to do. These young adults and their families deserve help.
How can interested people like myself, or people happening upon your website, learn more about how they can get involved, either to contribute financially or maybe to be part of the support network?
Well, you can look on our website, www.fasdcommunities.org, and there are plenty of ways. We need volunteer help. We need admin volunteer help. So far, everybody has been volunteers, and they can help. Fundraising would be a great area to help in. Setting up, we intend to hire someone to run the facility that has experience working with disabled adults, and then do a significant amount of training on the FASD component. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel from scratch. We will need things like furniture, equipment for farming. We can take donations for any of those things, and we can help just by spreading the word, the advocacy, and learning about FASD communities. Yes, I think that society and the taxpayer are already paying for these people, and that through the criminal justice system, through the hospitals, through the mental health, through the drug addiction programs, and I think we could, once we get this up and going, we could do it much more cost effectively and successfully for all involved. So the young adult would benefit, their families would benefit, and society would also benefit.